So I want to talk real quick about purpose and direction and vision, how important that is, and how we lack that in today. And it's turned into a big void that we try to fill with basically like consumerism. So when we have materialism, it seems like there's this clear progression. You have materialism, which says there's no spirit. You're basically just made of matter arranged in a special way that has an emergent phenomena that we call consciousness. All of a sudden, you put stuff together, and boom, you put it together in a certain way, and there you have consciousness. And the main purpose of you as a human biological entity is to acquire resources so that you can survive in order to live long enough to pass on your genes. So feed and fuck. That is the goal of life. And it's a very simple level one, like surface level take on the universe. So it makes sense because it's coming from that level of seeing the material and taking only that aspect into consideration. So it's true on that partial observation. And because it's partially true, it's wrong. So that's why we need to clean up all the partial truths, is because the partialness leads to a parasitic, detrimental, disharmonious relationship. So, purpose. If we boil down how consciousness works, it's an energy processor. There's energy coming in, and there's energy going out, and there's some dynamic form of processing it. And consciousness is kind of like a vehicle, right? It's kind of like we're driving around in our consciousness body, and we'll have a goal. We'll have data of feedback of the environment, of what's happening inside of us internally, and we'll adjust to try to hit the goal. So said very simply, our brain is a goal-striving machine. And it's got all these antenna systems, its whole entire body, picking up all of the data and sending out data. It's a two-way street, sending and receiving. And it's interpreting this data. So there's data, there's goals, there's interpretation, there's friends and foes, there's other players that's processing. And then there's also non-players. There's like objects or things that will either help you get there, it's an affordance, or a item that will be an obstacle. It'll create resistance or something to overcome. And so the whole point is that it is a necessity that we actually prioritize the information coming in, because we can't give it all equal value of importance. Some information is more relevant and more important towards informing the right actions to get to our goal, or to avoid a villain, to avoid an anti-goal. I'm just laying out the table right now before we serve the meal. I'm setting the table up. So the importance of purpose is it's the top of that hierarchy. We have a value hierarchy of things we value, of goals, and there's going to be one orienting principle. There's one transcendent value, ideal, that creates the orientation, the calibration for everything else that comes below it. Jordan Peterson gave a talk on this. It was before he released his recent book of He Who Wrestles with God. It was a talk of the Logos at Ephesus. That's the original title. They changed the title last time I saw it. But you should be able to see, if you type on YouTube, Jordan Peterson, Logos at Ephesus. And he's talking about a similar thing about the value hierarchy, needing to prioritize the information that we're focusing on. And so he says in that talk when there's a culture is essentially supposed to be something with a central focus that orients the whole culture, the mass of people around it. And if it doesn't have that centering focus point for that culture, it's not a culture, it's chaos. It starts to devolve into chaos. And so purpose, Viktor Frankl, I think of his book, The Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about the importance of having a vision for the future. And it gives meaning to our suffering. It creates that context. And so if I were to try to summarize, what is the mission of the universe? What's the goal? What's the number one priority? It's to expand love. And that's, there's a cost to trying to simplify it. Like that can be misinterpreted. But what does that mean? Expand love. But I will eat that cost for the sake of trying to keep it so succinct, so simple. Expand love. If you can just like wake up and be like, how can I expand love today? That would be a good day if you could move towards that ideal. And so part of this is like the ikigai, right? There's the what you love, what you're good at, what society needs, what society will pay you for. There's this, they were trying to, with that ikigai concept, they were trying to find a harmonious relationship between those four aspects of society, because that's what those four circles represent. There's different aspects, and they're trying to find that golden relationship between the three. And so in keeping that at the forefront, expand consciousness, I think the cool thing is that when you have a question in mind, or when you have an ideal in mind, and you go throughout life, you're going to be looking through that question or through that focus point. So if you're, for example, if I was like, I have a business idea, but I need to raise $10,000 in order to do it by next month, then if I have that idea and that question of like, where can I get $10,000 by next month in my head constantly as I'm going throughout the day, I'm going to be seeing those opportunities compared to had I not been thinking about that. An opportunity might have been there, but I'll miss it. And that's the whole reticular activation system, the RAS for the brain. It's when you buy a car, you see that car everywhere. It's because you're able to give a different value, give a different meaning. You're attributing things differently. So the great thing about having a clear purpose of expanding love and just reorienting to that as the main focus is that you can start to discover what that means for you. Because there's like the concept of follow your bliss. And it's this idea of connecting to your individual Tao, the flow of how you align your individual flow with the greater flow, and finding out what your nature is and how that supports the current setup of the cosmic clock, the cosmic simulation video game that we're playing, and how to best serve that in terms of that ikigai intersection. So there's not really any takeaway advice in this. It's just laying out how consciousness works. So I'll keep it at that, keep it super short. And that basically when you remove that upper level meaning of expanding love, think about that. That's actually, there's a sense of it's one's own self, because you are a form of love. And then it's also directed towards others. If you're expanding love seems to be an inherently relationship-based word. Like, can you love by yourself? Even when you're like with yourself, it's almost like your higher self and your lower self, where it's a feedback loop between two aspects of yourself. But my point in that is that it really starts to create that expansive flow outwards, the progression of the I to we to all progression that we all can go through, and that's the hero's journey. The hero's journey is to go from lower maturity to higher maturity. It's to go from focusing on just a self or a small group to a progressively larger group. It's to increasingly expand the fidelity, to increase the accuracy of the mental models that you're navigating life with, and to there's so many other aspects too. To be able to regulate your body, to feel into your body and to regulate it. That's actually a cool twofold framework that you can apply. That's all we're looking to do basically, is to increase our awareness of a certain structure or body, and to increase our influence over it, our ability to skillfully manipulate it, to regulate it. So we can talk about our individual body, ourself. So there's self-awareness, and like, what thoughts am I having? How am I feeling? How sore or tight are my muscles? Is my nervous system leaning into a little fight or flight right now? Can I breathe and bring it back and regulate it into a calm, relaxed, and connected state? So that's self. And then there's social awareness, social influence. And then there's business. You can be aware of all the business metrics, what you measure improves. So you want to be aware of all the stuff that you want to get better at, and then you actually want to be able to drive the KPIs to a better number. So there's all these different bodies. You can think of it that way. There's your physical, there's your individual body, mental, physical, emotional. There's social body, your friends and family. There's your business body, which is could be like the website, all the different systems in there. It could be your email list and the online community. That it's this whole thing that you can have an awareness of, and it's on a spectrum. It's not like, are you aware or are you not aware? It's to what degree are you aware? And on a spectrum like that, it's an infinite game. We're in a universe that has an unlimited source of energy to unpack, as it's trying to reflect back something that's transcendentally perfect. So that's why this game is infinite, is because we're going to keep reflecting back better and better and better, but we can't reach perfection. It's like an asymptote in math. If you have 1 over x in math, it creates a chart that gets infinitely closer to 0 on the bottom. 1 over x. You can go 1 over 100, it's really close. 1 over 1,000, it's even closer. Keep going, it never actually arrives at 0. And that's the universe unfolding. It's this blossoming. And as it blossoms, it reflects that transcendent, pure source light even better. But it can't reach an end goal. So it's this fun game we're playing. Well, it can be a little struggle, right? Because it seems like there's actually a point we get to when we're at a certain level of awareness and consciousness where there's a fundamental shift, and it actually becomes like less suffering and fun. It seems like Earth is a certain switch point where we're right on the cusp to being a conscious being that is aware, that it's a conscious creator, that it's able to influence its own environment internally, and then do the same externally to project and to manipulate its environment, and that it can do so in a harmonious way or a disharmonious way. So it seems like this is the tipping point. Once you cross over, it becomes more like, it seems like you have more tools to more effectively do the job, do the game. But then again, it seems like as well, on every level of consciousness development, there's another devil, there's another challenge of a structure to harmonize. So that might be my hopium, to be like, oh, after we pass this human Earth test, we're chilling. But knowing the nature of games, it's probably not. It just gets more and more fun challenges as we do more challenging things, right? Like you could be like a Red Bull athlete and do a crazy 360 something, and you're like, that was the world's most challenging trick. But now we've got to try to do it even more. Let's try to do a 720. So I think that's how consciousness is. But the main point I want to emphasize here is it seems like a certain aspect of society is that it's just waking up and figuring out how it can do what it's doing better. And that's it's mirrored in AI right now, where AI can actually look at its code and improve it and start to do a self-iterating feedback loop and have a certain degree of self-awareness. So it seems like that's what the universe does fundamentally, is that it produces a structure that can then look at itself and have this increasingly conscious, increasingly recursive meta feedback loop. So yeah, and in saying all this about, like, I started with vision and having that orienting transcendental element at the top of the value hierarchy. It also seems to be one of the most important priorities in life as a human, is to actually connect back to that still center, that source, and that's the thing that's going to guide us. And it's similar to Qui-Gon Jinn. So there's the Jedi. I talked about, I don't know if it was in this video, spirituality and materialism, because I've made several videos today. And this can be roughly, just generally mirrored as the Jedi and the Sith, where the Jedi are, let's see, the Jedi, let me get this right. The Sith are the emotion, right? So they are the lack of science. The Sith are the spiritual fanaticism. They just kind of go on their internal state of like, ooh, I'm feeling lustful, so I'm going to lust. I'm feeling angry, so I'm going to kill this guy. And then the Jedi, on the other hand, are like the scientists. They're like we have rules, and you must follow these rules no matter what. No matter what, just follow these rules. So that could be talked about as like a masculine rule external based thing for the Jedi. And then for the Sith, it could be talked about as a feminine internal feeling state, emotion quality that they embody. And then Qui-Gon Jinn, he's right in the middle. He is a Jedi that actually doesn't always follow the rules, doesn't always take the external as a priority. He looks at it holistically. He connects to the Force. He connects to the source and says, you know, guide me. What should I be doing right now? What is in most alignment with how the universe is trying to expand love in this moment? And being a servant for the Force. So that seems to be one of the most important milestones or goals that we can hit as a human, is to actually forge that connection. And that's what the yoga and several other terms are implying. They're referring to this union that we can create between our, I believe, between our chitta, our nous, like the soul, our individual soul, and the spirit soul, like the all, like that transcendental source, which is, I'm thinking about the distinction between the two. I'm like, that's, the source seems to be like featureless, whereas the essence of your spirit or soul is like your unique signature. Visually right now, I think of it as like the source, that transcendental source is the center. It's that transcendental center in a circle. And then your spirit is one diameter. And there's actually infinite diameters. If you go throughout the whole circle, you can drop whoop, 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 and all of them pass through the center. So they're all connected by that spirit. They all have their unique degree on the circle, and they're all infinitely expandable, right? When that circle's perimeter gets bigger and the radius gets bigger, so do each individual diameter. Anyways, that's just a fun way to visualize it. I'll end it here. Got a loud plane going over. Much love. I'm going to be doing more talks, just getting the habit of talking to the camera and dropping the expectation down of what I'm trying to deliver. Just going to talk right now. Much love.